Alrighty, welcome back.
Hi.
Oh shit. Welcome back, pardon me.
You immediately. You want to
Woo.
start? You want to just do it again?
No,
Okay.
that's coughing's natural. It happens.
Yes.
We're here. We're in here. Let's get right into it. Episode 5
Yeah. Season 2, episode 5, Ghost of Harrenhal.
of Harrenhal.
Yeesh.
Right on.
So we start with, we're opening on Renly's like men. It's clear that like a storm is rising. It's heavy winds and stuff. We cut into Renly's
There's a storm brewing.
There's a storm a brewing. We cut into Renly's tent. He's in there with Catelyn and Brienne. Catelyn, they're talking about Rob's terms and that kind of stuff. And she says, I swear it by the mother. And she's like, my son has no interest in the Iron Throne. And she just says, you know, look, he's just doing this because of what Joffrey did to his father. And Renly's like, well, I mean, so, you know, there's really doesn't seem any reason for hostility because if he doesn't want the Iron Throne and that's what I'm after and he's okay with me taking it and just like.
And he's like, I'll allow him to call himself King of the North.
Yeah. And then he gives him, he tells her how far the North will cover. And then he says, all I ask in return is that he swears an oath to me. And she's like, well, what's the terms of the oath? And he said the same one that Ned swore to Robert 18 years ago.
Yeah, but Ned wasn't king.
No.
And we're talking about a king of the North now.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Him being like, well, yeah, that's cool. You can be like,
you can call yourself that.
Assistant to the king.
Yeah, assistant to the king. Yeah.
But, yeah.
So she's like, okay, well, if Rob agrees, what does he get in return for his loyalty? And Renly says, well, after I defeat my brother in battle, the Baratheons and Starks will fight their common enemy together as they've done many times before. So
Yeah.
I'll help you take out Joffrey.
Show.
So Catelyn says, she's like, I really think you should not fight your brother and negotiate a peace with him. And he was like, you were there. What is wrong with you?
Yeah, does he seem like he's open to that?
Yeah, and he said, I'd have better luck debating the wind. And she says, he goes to leave and he goes to kind of end the conversation. And he goes, we're natural allies. We should be together, the Starks and the Baratheons. And that's when Shadow Dude comes in.
The Dementor.
The Dementor.
Shadow Dude.
He stands up behind Renly and we see like the reflection in the mirror.
And you know, though I've watched this probably 3 times, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I finally paid attention because they've always said it looks like Stannis, and yeah, it does a little bit.
Yeah.
I guess they kind of like his head kind of looks. It's the same shape, and
yeah.
I mean it's vague, but it
I
looks
mean,
like
you
him.
could. I think like height, build, and stuff like
sure.
that. You could probably say like,
Yeah.
there's more Stannis than anyone else.
For sure.
And so Stannis Shadow Dementor stabs Renly in the back into the heart, and he did. Brienne obviously screams, catches him as he falls. And that's when 2 guards enter. They immediately see Renly on the floor, Brienne holding him, and they're like, you'll die for this.
Yeah, because that's what she did. She killed him and then was like,
I'm so sorry. Yeah. And then Catelyn's like, hold on. And they're like, no, we're just going to fight her.
Yeah, why would you not listen to the woman you would listen any other time you would listen to her? Like, I'm Lady Stark.
Yeah.
Why don't you 2 bitches like chill for a moment?
Mm-hmm.
It's like no.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that is like the end all be all. The king is
dead.
Has been struck.
Yeah. So Brienne, she's like, all right, well, I guess I gotta kill these guys.
Yeah, which she handles that shit.
Yeah, she does the knife through the
down the back.
Yeah.
People like that move.
It's a good move.
It works.
It's efficient. So afterwards, Brienne obviously is completely horrified over what just happened. She sobs over Renly's body. You can hear people outside like getting closer, and Catelyn's like, look, I understand, but we got to go. Yeah, and she's like, look, they'll hang you for this. Even if we explain, there's no way to explain, like, Shadow Dude, you and I were the only 2 in the tent.
Yeah.
We needed to go.
So she's like, all right.
And Brienne says she won't leave him, and Catelyn says, look, you can't avenge him if you're dead. And Brienne's like,
good
all
point.
Right, let's go.
Touche. Yeah. Go out. No, wait. Take the back curtain.
Take this. That's the wrong curtain.
Yeah.
Go this curtain. Yeah. So we see Stannis's ships. They're selling. They're like in the water, sailing towards the shore.
Away,
we see little.
Sail away. Same. Dis-moi.
We see Littlefinger looking out over the water. Then we cut to Loras. He's crying over Renly not making it obvious that they were lovers.
He didn't make it.
Yeah. And so the whole time, oh my God.
Girl?
Yeah.
Marjorie?
Marjorie, yeah. I completely forgot her name. Marjorie, too many M's.
A lot of names.
A lot of names.
In general.
Marjorie, she's like, I understand, but we got to go again. So many people are just like, we need to haul ass.
Yep.
So haul ass, Bob.
Haul ass, Bob.
So that's when Littlefinger enters, and Loras is like, get out immediately. And he's like, hold on, we need to discuss things because Stannis is gonna be here in an hour. I just saw his boats. They're on the way.
And Littlefinger's like, I know. You guys were gay together, but chill.
Yeah, chill. We all know it.
We know. I know you want to cut me down.
It's okay. So that's when Marjorie's like, well, Lady Brianna murdered him. And Loras is like, what? You don't believe that. I don't believe that.
Yeah, not so much.
Littlefinger doesn't
also,
believe
side
that.
note, she's wearing the fucking popcorn bowl dress again.
Yeah, she is. That dress is quite insane.
We need to get out of this fashion this zone.
Part,
yeah. Let's get to the next one.
Yeah. It makes her look like, I kept thinking like, oh man, that like would make a really nice oven mitt. Like the material it's made out of.
Or a popcorn bowl.
Yeah, you're right. It's really
the worst.
ridiculous.
I was like, I was for sure we were only going to see it the one time.
Nope. It's back.
But no, it's back.
Yeah. So Loras says he doesn't believe that Brienne killed him. He said, look, Stannis is the only one who stands to win anything from this. And Littlefinger's like, I mean, you're right. And so that's when Littlefinger's like to Loras, he goes, what do you desire most in the world? And he's like, revenge.
Yeah.
Obviously.
For sure.
And so Littlefinger says, if justice is what you want, you need to be smart about it. You can't avenge him from the grave. So many people are saying, like, look, you can't kill somebody or can't take care of something if you're dead.
Yeah, this is reoccurring.
Yeah. So Marjorie's like, look, we have to leave. We need to go. And so Loras is like, all right. So she's like, I think she says, go get the horses. He leaves. And Marjorie stands there for a second looking over Renly, and Littlefinger is still there, and she's like, he was so handsome, and Littlefinger's like, he was your grace. Yeah, he was your grace. And she said, calling yourself king doesn't make you one. If he wasn't a king, I wasn't a queen. And so Littlefinger says, do you want to be a queen? And she says, no, I want to be the queen.
Duh, queen.
Yeah, and they exchange a look of...
And she gives the Babs Bunny look.
Yeah. Definitely hard babs. So then we cut to Stannis. Yeah.
Stannis.
No.
No?
We cut to Stannis.
Stannis.
Yeah.
Are you
sure?
No.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
I don't know why I didn't put who was talking, but he keeps talking about Stannis and then it goes down. We cut to Cersei and Tyrion. Sorry.
Word.
They're talking. And she says, killed by who?
And she's drunk.
Yeah.
You can tell she's drunk.
Openly drunk. And she says, she says, killed by who? And Tyrion says, Catelyn Stark somehow, some say. And then some say that it was one of his Kingsguard. And then some say Stannis did it. And she's like, well, whoever did it, I say, well done. Because I'm drunk.
Yeah, she's loose.
And he's like, look, Renly's entire army went flocking to Stannis, so
so now you have
we need to worry about this.
That's more seasoned in battle, just got a fuckload on his team.
Yeah, all but Highgarden. And she's like, look, Littlefinger says we can outspend them. Who cares? And he's like, yeah, that's not going to help.
Yeah, exactly. Her whole life is just throw some money at it,
Yeah,
or here, give me that piece of paper. I'm going to tear it up.
Yeah,
or burn it.
And he says that he's like, you obviously still don't understand, and he's like, Stannis is coming for us sooner rather than later. And then she brings up Marcella again, and he's like, look, again, she's safer in Dorne. Stannis is coming for us. Do you want her here when he gets here?
Yeah, not so much.
So she's like, you're so clever with your schemes and plots. And he's like...
Yeah, because he says he doesn't blame her. She's an innocent girl, and he doesn't blame her for her.
For Cersei, yeah. Or she doesn't blame Cersei for herself.
And then because she's drunk and not as witty as him, she always has to go like, oh, you're very funny. Yeah. You're always so funny.
You're
or,
so clever.
Oh, you're so clever. It's like, yeah, I mean,
bitch.
That's true.
Yeah.
Like, think of something clever yourself to say.
Yeah. So she says, you're so clever with your schemes and plots. And he goes, schemes and plots are the same thing.
More cleverness.
Yeah. And so he says, we need to be ready for attack. And she said, the king is taking personal care for preparations.
Oh, is he now?
Yeah. And she's like, and he's like, look, it's important that we talk about this. And she's like, it's the king's royal prerogative for him not to withhold information from his council.
It's just prerogative. I'll do what I want to do.
It's my prerogative.
Word.
So of course she gives a stupid ass smirk as Tyrion walks out because he's frustrated. So we cut to Lancel. He's talking to Tyrion. He's like in a cart with him.
Yeah, a little like Aladdin cart.
Yeah. And so Lancel says wildfire. And Tyrion's like, you wouldn't lie to me, cousin, would you? And he was like, if the vile allegations against my brother and sister are true, do you really think that Jaime would be less likely to kill you when I tell him that you two are fucking?
Yikes.
Know? Yeah. And so he's like, just threatening Lancel, making sure he's getting the right information.
Well, and making sure he's squeezing all of it out instead of being like, it's wildfire.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, good meeting.
Yeah. So he says that they have thousands of pots already filled. And Tyrion asks him, when did she tell you this? And he said, I heard her talking to the pyromancer. Yeah. And he said after he left the other night, she went to meet him. So obviously he stayed and spied. And so then Lancel says that he swears on his life that the information's correct. And Tyrion's like, I don't care about your life. And Lancel's like, I swear before the old gods and the new, just going through all the shit he can. And Tyrion's like, even torturing you is boring. Yeah. And so he tells him to get out. And he kicks Lancel out of the cart. Yeah. And then he dips his head out and he's like, Lancel, tell my friend Bronn if anything is to happen to me, to kill you.
To kill you.
Yeah. And so Lancel says, if anything is to happen to Lord Tyrion, please kill me. And Bronn's like, it will be my pleasure.
Yeah. Alrighty.
Yeah. So we cut to Stannis. Davos walks up to him. He apologizes for what happens to Renly. And says that, your men are mourning, or, men are mourning.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's your brother.
His new men.
Yeah, his new men are mourning. And, but he's like, but side note, I also need to speak to you about what the fuck happened.
Yeah, just a little side note.
Yeah.
What's up with the Dementor that came out of the Red Woman's crotch?
Yeah, I just one quick question. And so, Stannis is like, look, I have what I needed. Doesn't matter what happened in that cave. Stop talking about it.
And he said to not ask me, and he's like, you haven't been known as someone
to be told something twice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So he confirms that all of the Bannermen had come to his side except for the Tyrells. And he's like, oh, I'm sure that they'll be with our enemies soon. Yeah. Yeah. Which is the clear place they would go. Yeah. So Davos. That's when he tries to bring up the Red Woman again, but Stannis shuts it down, and he says that, like, I've never known you to said something twice. And so that's when Davos changes subject, and he's like, when do we set sail for King's Landing? And so they talk about that, and Stannis says once Blackwater Bay is clear, then they'll take the city. And so Davos says, well, will Melisandre be there? And if she is with Stannis when the city is taken, everyone's going to give the praise to her and then be even more worried about this situation. And so he's like, what do you mean? And basically Davos is like, some people think you're pussy whipped.
Yeah.
she whispers in your ear, and then
in so many words.
Yeah, the best, easiest way to sum up that entire paragraph of what
Whoopah!
You can't do anything. So he says, you won those bannermen from Renly. Don't lose them to her.
He's like, you've got a good point.
Mm-hmm. So Stannis says they'll set out for King's Landing without Melisandre, and Davos gets to lead the vanguard. Basically.
And he's like, I don't really want to do that.
Yeah, he says it's I appreciate the honor, even though I think you're sending me to die pretty much. But he's like, but the other lords won't be happy, and that's when Stannis is like, the other ones should be happy that I'm not hanging them
for treason.
Yeah. And so then
for being on Team Snoopy.
Yeah. And so he says, hard truth cuts both ways, Sir Davos. And that's when you see Davos leaves. And Stannis has this moment, which I assume is supposed to be some remorse for the decision to kill his brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be at least
a smidgen.
Yeah, 1% in there somewhere.
There's a look that he gives is for someone, and I can only assume Renly.
Well, it just seems like the same thing he goes through later on an even bigger scale, where it's like, is all this sacrifice really worth it?
Yeah, exactly.
And so you finally get to the point where it's like, fuck no?
Yeah.
Not so much.
Yeah. So we see Tyrion. He's walking back from his meeting with Lancel with Bronn. They're walking like through the common area. And
there's a, what do you call him?
Well, before that, they're talking about Tyrion's wit, and he's like, "Well, I've never been able to kill people with it, so it's not the most useful gift."
And Bronn's like, "Well,
yeah,
that's good for me."
Yeah, and so then he asks about Tyrion or Tywin, and Tyrion says, "Well, he hasn't said a raven in weeks. He's kind of busy, being humiliated by Robb."
Yeah, being bested by the Stark boy.
Yeah, so that's when they walk up on a guy who's just kind of speaking in the square.
Yeah, a street preacher.
Like a preacher, yeah. He's talking about the rotten king. He says that he's a product of incest, and like, what do you expect when that happened? When the rotten fruit breeds with rotten fruit, and so, was it Tyrion that says it's hard to argue with his assessment?
Yeah,
and so he says, well, the king's a total loss. He's like, I'm just worried about the rest of us now. They know, and because Bronn confirms, like, oh, after what he did to your present that you sent to the girl that Rosalind had to beat, he was like, well, the king's a lost cause. I'm worried about the rest of us now. And then that's when the street preacher says how the king is being led by a demon monkey, and Tyrion doesn't get that it's him.
Yeah, he's just like, ha, demon monkey.
Yeah, and Bronn's like, that's you.
That's you, dopey. Yeah. It's like, how are you this smart, but you don't get that?
Yeah, exactly. And so he says, look, they blame you for all the city's issues.
Yeah, because, Bronn's got he's out and about. Mm-hmm. He hears people talking.
Well, and it's a thing, too, that, like, it's always been that the king takes a shit in the hand, deals with it. So it's like, now they just think, oh, well, it's this boy king, and obviously someone behind him, so they just
not
put it on the hand.
Oh, it's his mother.
Yeah.
And his
because
family.
Why would you blame a woman?
Yeah.
Yeah. She obviously couldn't make him that crazy.
He's the hand of the king, so.
Yeah, exactly.
His fault.
Even though
he's out.
That's when I would be like, see, I have this paper that's like your hand of the king, air quotes, but like I'm not really, so blame it on my father.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I would fall back on. But he's not there, so whatever. So we cut to Theon. He's on the shore, looking out at his ship.
Looking out at the bitch.
The sea bitch.
Oh yeah, there's my bitch.
All of his men are getting ready. They're like kind of talking and loading everything. And Theon's like, stop. I command you to stop.
And everybody's just like,
sea bitch crew.
Not so much.
No one's paying attention.
Yo, sea bitch crew.
Yeah. And so then he goes, your captain commands you to stop.
And they just laugh at him.
Yeah, and so he says that they're setting for the stony shore, and he goes, there'll be spoils in it for you and women if you do your jobs well. And then this old guy walks up. He's not really that old.
Older guy. Yeah, definitely.
Clearly has done this.
Could be
several times.
Could be his father.
Yeah, and he's like, and who's gonna judge if our jobs are done well? And he says, I've been reaping and raving since before you left Balon's balls. I don't have a lot use for you at all. All I need is a ship. I could be a captain. And you wouldn't know where I could get a ship, do you? And Theon's like, I'll hang you as a traitor. And he's like,
sure you will.
Yeah. And
you
that's
soft, boy. You soft.
And that's when we see Yara. She comes up and she's like, making fun of him. Oh, like, don't, we understand. Don't hurt us. Yeah. And like, of course, all the men are like, hey, Yara, what's up?
Yeah, because they all bro down together.
Yeah, exactly. So
Theon's bitch made.
Yeah, and Theon's like, she's talking about her ship. She's like, oh, I've got 30. I got to go over here because mine won't all fit through here. It's too narrow. And he's like, well, shouldn't you get on it? What happens if your crew leaves without you? And she's like, my crew would wait on deck for a year if I asked them to.
And your little crew is dipping on you as we speak.
Yeah, and so of course Theon turns around and all of them are, they're like en route. Outie. So that's when I think Dagma, I think is how his name is.
I like that guy.
I meant to
I like
look
his
up
look
his name
and his voice and his accent and shit.
Yeah, I think it's Dagma. Let me look it up so I make sure.
Dagna? I think it's Dagna.
I always forget his name.
He's first. Yeah, that's it. Dagmar. First mate.
Technically yes, first mate. Yeah. He's first mate.
First mate of the biatch.
Biatch.
Welcome aboard the biatch. Rookie biatch.
Rookie biatch. So he walks up and he's like, look, I'll take you. And Theon's like, I don't really, how do I trust you? And he was like, just come on. And he's like, look, the men aren't going to respect you until you prove it yourself. And he's like, well, how am I supposed to do that when they've all been doing this for millions of years? And
when he's like, and my task isn't really something where I would,
where I
would
can
put
prove
me
myself.
in a position to prove myself.
Yeah. So that's when Dagma says, he's like, well, we're Ironborn. We don't do as we're told. We do as we like.
Yeah.
So do what you want. And so he's like, well, Tommen Square is near Stony Shore and it's a more impressive prize, but the second that we take it, Winterfell will come to take it back. And he's like, oh, okay. So the bigger prize here is Winterfell.
Yeah.
We distract them by taking Tommen and then take Winterfell. And that's when Theon's like, oh, I like this guy and I have a plan and maybe this will work. So he's like, take me to my ship.
Starting to feel a little arm bone.
Feel that arm. Yeah.
I'm going to go take some shit.
Yeah. So we cut to Tywin in his council, not doing a very good job counseling him. They're talking about how like the Stark men are tired and hungry and frozen, and how they're not gonna last.
He's like, yeah, they're good.
Yeah, he's like, Starks understand winter better than we do. Like, what is wrong with you? And so they're like, well, his men are discontent. They want to get home and take up harvest and get all that they can before the winter comes. And they're like, well, they're incredibly discontent. And he's like, I'm sure if you surveyed my men, they would be incredibly discontent. It's war.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
No one's content.
Yeah. And so, Tywin says, look, Rob's men worship him. If we're waiting for him to fail, he's not going to fail, but not at least without help. So
our help.
Yeah. And so he's like, how do we stop them? And Reginald, one of the guys counseling, says, well, I don't think we can do it on the mines that we have now. We need to take some rest. And Tywin's like, if you weren't my cousin.
If you weren't my cousin.
Yeah. And so he was like, oh, you probably want to go see your wife, huh? She's in Lancelport? All right, well, leave. Go. And he's like, what? And he's like, if your name wasn't Lannister, you'd be scrubbing pots. So you can just, I'm letting you go. Why don't you leave before I change your mind and send your wife your head?
Yeah.
Yeah. And of
Hit
course.
her with a 7.
Yeah. Yes. And then. Nice reference.
Just slid that in there.
That's what she said. So Reginald hauls ass out, and that's when Arya walks up. Well, she has a flagon of wine, and he's like, "Not wine, water. We'll be here for some time."
Not wine, water.
Oh. And so as she walks away, Tywin says, "Girl, where are you from?" And she says, "Maidenpool." And he's like, who are the lords? Remind me. And she says, House Mutel.
Girl, how are you not going to have your whole fake story down?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Especially if you're going to...
Can't half-ass this thing.
And so he asks what the sigil is, and she can't tell him. And he's like, it's a red salmon. And he was like, any maiden pool girl would know that.
Yeah.
So he's like, you're a northerner, aren't you? And she nods yes. And so he's like, good. Again, where are you from?
And then she obviously knows the north.
Yeah, so she says Barrentown, and she says House Dustin, 2 crossed axes with a black crown. And he's like, and what do the northern men say about Robb Stark? And she says, they call him the young wolf, that he rides into battle on the back of a giant dire wolf. He can even turn into a wolf when he likes.
He flies. He's got a 10-inch dick.
Yeah, and that he can't be killed. And
can't die.
And so Tywin says, do you believe them? And she says, no, anyone can be killed. And they have this slight stare down.
Yeah, because she's looking through his soul. Like,
yeah.
I'm
going to kill you. Yeah. And so then he says, fetch that water. So then she leaves. We see a cut scene to her walking, like, to get the water. She's going across this little bridge area, and she sees Jaqen and 2 men. They're dressed in Lannister soldier attire. So she kind of hides in the shadows a little bit and, like, ducks her head so they don't pay attention to her. And then as they leave, she walks over to, like, where the water is. And Jaqen comes up behind her, and he says, a girl says nothing. And he says, a girl keeps her mouth closed. And he says, no one hears and friends may talk in secret. Yes. In his very weird Jaqen way.
Yeah.
And so he says, a boy becomes a girl. And she says, I was always a girl. And he goes, I was always aware.
So fucking charming.
Yeah. Oh, super charming.
Love Jaqen.
Jaqen.
Or at least that version of him.
Yeah. And so he says, a girl keeps secrets, and it's not for a man to spoil them. And she says, well, you're one of them now. I should have let you burn. And he says, and you fetch water for one of them now. Why is that right for you and wrong for me?
Ooh, burn.
Yeah. And so she says, I didn't have a choice. And he says, you did, I did, and here we are.
Making a lot of good points.
Yeah, that's definitely. And then he says, a man pays his debt. A man owes three lives, or a man owes 3 debts. And he says, a red god takes what is his, and only death may pay for life. And he's like, you saved me, you stole 3 deaths from the red god, and we have to give them back.
So he follows the Dementor god.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well.
Right? Red god? Same as the lady?
Well.
Or are those different gods? They're 2 different gods? Red god and
well, because it's like we know Jaqen has more than the red god.
Okay.
I don't know. I think it's a misinterpret thing because it does seem like he does that. But if he truly studies that in the House of Many Faces, then he doesn't. There's no one red god unless it's all one god. You know what I mean?
All under one umbrella.
So right now he says the red god.
Okay.
And we're assuming the Lord of Light. Yes.
Oh, the Lord of Light.
Well, that's the same thing.
Oh, it is the same thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Rahora.
A bunch of different
Yeah, it's just
names
like different names.
Dany has later when she has like 14 fucking names.
Yeah, exactly. So she says, or he says, speak 3 names and the man will do the rest. And he says 3 lives, I'll give you, no more, no less. She goes, I can name anyone and you'll kill him. And
sick.
Yeah. And he goes, a man has said. And so she's like, the dude that asked the questions. And he's like, a man needs a name. And she's like, they call him the Tickler?
I want Jaqen to talk to the little fat kid from Bad Santa. Do you want sandwiches? A man has said. How much lettuce do you want? A man has said how much lettuce he wants. Yeah, but how much? The normal amount of lettuce, a man has said.
So, so she says the Tickler. He says that's enough, and he says, "Go now, girl. Your master's thirsty."
Ooh.
And so, then we cut to north of the wall.
She was taking a while. He was probably pissed.
Yeah.
When she got back.
Oh yeah. So we go to the north of the wall. The Night's Watch is like hiking up to the Fist of the First Men.
Looks absolutely miserable.
Yeah. And somehow none of them have something wrapped around their faces.
Yeah. Well,
what is
John's super thick, full, sexy, frost-bitten hair is covering his
That's true.
beautiful face.
He brutes throughout this entire
I'm just thinking, like,
entire
if I was out
episode.
there with no hat on, I'd be fucked. My hair sucks so much.
Yeah.
He's got that beautiful mane to keep him warm.
Yeah, he doesn't need a hat.
All of them out there have nice hair.
Yeah, that's true.
I'd need the nicest hat, made out of a whole fucking deer.
They're talking about the half hand. They're like, do you think he's around? Is he up there? And
What? Okay, is this when they have like the wide shot?
of them all marching up.
Is that their friends
The
that they
half
meet
hand?
up with?
Yeah.
And that's the guy that's talking later.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not at the point to where he's looking out and he's like, oh, I can see like the fire. Are we supposed to be able to see that? Because I
No.
didn't see shit.
No, you're not supposed to see it.
Okay, just making sure it wasn't.
No, it's
just
supposed
me.
to show that like
Okay.
John has good eyes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're not to that part.
No, not at all.
Go ahead.
He said, well, they say the half hand does things in his own time, so he'll just show up when he shows
And
up.
who is that again?
He's a ranger with the Night's Watch.
That stays out there?
He's one of he's
or is he just
like
out
one
like
of
on a tour right now?
No, he's out there. I'm pretty sure he was sent out to find Benjen.
Okay,
I
so he's been
believe.
out
I
there
may
a
be a little
while,
wrong
and
on
now
that,
they're
but-
about to meet up.
Yeah,
Are they
yeah.
aware of them, or they
Yeah,
just
yeah.
see them?
No,
so
they're
both of them are
supposed
aware
to
of
meet
each
there.
other.
They're trying to meet
That's
up.
the rendezvous point.
Yeah, because of course Half Hand has been tracking the wildlings, trying to figure out what's going on up there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why he's called Half Hand. He's like pretty sure. I may be talking on my ass here, but I'm pretty sure my ass. Perfect arse.
I'm just a perfect arse.
I'm pretty sure that Mance may have taken his hand, or
Ah,
part of it.
okay.
Yeah, but either way, he's definitely fought the wildlings and dealt with them
Cool.
for a long time. So John asks if most of the things that you've heard about the half hand are true, because like there's, he's like, I heard he stayed out here for one whole winter and like this kind of stuff. And so they're out there. And so John's like, it seems impossible for a man to survive out here on his own. And Jorah Mormont is like, you'd be surprised at, how one can survive.
You'd be surprised at how many caves and redheads you find walking around
That's
out
true. Yeah, definitely. So Sam, of course, he's like behind them, and he's like, it's just beautiful. Gilly would love it.
here. Yeah, and it's when he said that, I was like, bitch, you talked to her twice?
Yeah.
And it was always about like, help me, help my baby. You didn't talk about her loving landscapes and
Yeah.
you don't fucking know anything about
No.
her. She would shut the fuck up, Sam.
Yeah.
You don't know her.
Exactly.
She might hate it.
Exactly.
She might be like, I'm more of an indoor person.
Yeah,
I just
I'd
want my
rather-
armchair.
Yeah, I'd rather just not be out in the winter.
Gilly, you love this. I fucking hate this, Sam. No, you love it. I know you so well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shut up.
So that's when Dolores Ed is like, it's really sickening. People in love.
Especially fake love when you
Yeah.
don't even know the girl.
Yeah. So they go to make camp for the night. They're at the Fist of the First Men, and Sam's just like overjoyed. He's like, think of how old this place is. The First Men stood here before all of the wars
It
ever
is
took
super.
place.
It is really interesting.
Yeah,
but it
it
would
is.
only be interesting to someone that
Knows
knows
the history.
about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody
Everyone
else is just like, yeah,
there's
I
a lot
like
of
meat.
stones. Yeah,
and here's my sword.
Yeah.
and there's some water.
yeah.
and shit.
Exactly. So, so then he says, they stood here they were here. This is where they stood through the long night. And he's like, what do you think they were like? And, that's what I think Ed again is like, stupid. Smart people don't find themselves in places like this. And so that's when John says, I think they were afraid. I think they came here to get away from something. And I don't think it worked.
Yeah,
And he's like looking out over the vast land. And that's when they hear a horn blast. And so they talk. That's when we get some expose of, hey, remember, 1 blast means ranger, 2 means wildling. And then Sam's like, oh, and 3 means White Walkers.
yeah.
Just
I
throwing
didn't
it out
know
there.
if you guys knew about this secret menu one.
Yeah.
But 3 blasts.
Yeah, means this.
Gets you chili on it.
Yeah, yes.
And it means the White Walkers are
means
also
the Frosties are coming. So he says it's been 1,000 years since there's been 3 horn blasts, but that's the only time they do it. And so they're like, if it's been 1,000 years, how do you know this? And he's like, and they all were like, read it in a book.
Like, well, why'd you fucking ask if you know the answer?
Yeah, so that's when we find out that Corrin Halfhand has arrived.
Yeah.
So we got to Tyrion. He's looking at a jar of wildfire.
Yeah.
He's like inspecting it. And
hold on. How does it work if you don't have to ignite it? Or you do have to ignite it? Because they said they're just going to like launch.
Yeah, you have to ignite it.
Bottles of it, but when does it ignite? When it's
it can ignite at any second.
Well, you can't ignite it before you launch it because then it may kill you.
Yeah.
So
I'm pretty sure in Blackwater, because we see them use it, I'm pretty sure they launch it and then light
and
it.
then throw. Okay, so they like launch them and it like smothers the ship, and then they like throw arrows with fire on them, and that ignites it.
I think it might ignite itself.
Because I can't remember
too.
that scene exactly. That's what I was thinking. If it was something that kind of with like the force of the pot hitting the ship and like breaking, does that make it kind of ignite?
Yeah, I think that like conductivity.
Yeah.
will
we'll
allow
see.
it too. But no, because remember when Lancel is when the sept goes up.
Yeah.
It goes up when the candle burns out.
I know that part.
Yeah, so
That's
I'm saying that I think that you have to light it. Let's see. Once wildfire takes fire, the substance will burn until it's no more. So it has to take fire.
All right, so it does.
Will burn even through floating water.
I couldn't remember.
It's fickle. Any flame or spark will set it off. So yeah, so conductivity will set it off. So if it's exposed to sunlight, so that's why it's down in the depths, because even for a short time of exposure to sunlight will start a fire. So that's what it is. And once it's started, it starts a chain reaction with all other wildfire.
That's a pretty serious vault door.
Yeah. Well, that's why.
I don't think it's always had wildfire in there. What do you think used to be in there? Because when they had dragons, that door was there, I'm assuming, and they didn't need wildfire before that.
I think.
Or do you think they put it in?
I think it's for the wildfire because
specifically.
Yeah, because in the book they talk about how they have a system that if something happens, like if one of them catches fire, then they just douse the other ones with water. So there's like a system where they'll flood those storages.
Yeah, but they burn through water. So what does that do?
Well,
can you
it'll
dilute
stop
it
the
and then
other
it won't?
ones. So if it doesn't, if it goes in and sinks it, and I'm pretty sure maybe it fills sand as well. I can't quite remember, but they have a system set up.
Scary
so that it's supposed to cut it out if one of them catches.
I would not be comfortable being there after knowing all that shit was down there.
Well, that's like when Tyrion sees how many's down there. That's why he's like,
"Alrighty,
okay. Yeah." So, so he's looking at it. The pyromancer's like, "Take care of my lord," and then that's when he asks. He's like, "Oh, I heard that if you pissed on wildfire, it'll burn your cock off."
Yeah, it'll like shoot up your piss and burn your dick off.
Yeah, and that's when the pyromancer starts getting really creepy. You can see he's very excited by this shit, and he's like, "It could be true. It burns so hot, it melts wood and stone and
well, you
steel.
don't become what he
and flesh.
And flesh. You don't become what he is without being obsessed with fire.
Yeah, and that's like part of like what
fired guy.
Ryan started the fire. Yeah, so that's part of like, their whole thing is that they're supposed to be sketchy and kind of obsessed with this shit, and they're like quick to be like, we should use wildfire.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he says that
that's why earlier when they're talking, she knows what the plan is. She's up there just drunk, like, we're just gonna burn the shit out of them.
Yep. Yeah. So she said, the pyromancer says that after the dragons died, wildfire was the key to the Targaryen power. And Bronn says, I don't think it's more than pig shit. Because he was like, I've seen a lot. I've been to a lot of places. Everyone claims to have stuff like this.
Yeah.
And it just, more than times than not, it just ends up being pig shit. And so that's when the pyromancer's like, my order does not deal in pig shit. And so he was like, so Tyrion dilutes the conversation. He's like, all right, well, how many do you have? And Bronn's like,
he's like, here, let me take you to my giant room of pig shit.
Yeah, so he starts taking him down to this like little area with this crazy ass door, and but the whole time Bronn's saying, look, it doesn't matter how much we have don't have enough men to take care of it, and they're gonna be sloppy, and if this stuff is so finicky, like we shouldn't be dealing with this kind of stuff.
Because he's thinking rational. He's not like, oh, easy enough. Here, we have this stuff. Throw it at them. They die. We win. It's like, well, if you ever actually done this, it's hectic.
Yeah.
And you're going to have some really sensitive shit running around when it's in a very hectic situation.
Yeah. So he says, men die, men shit themselves, men run. He says, poor cunts defending the city will burn it down. Men win wars, not magic tricks. We shouldn't use this shit. That's what Bronn basically sums it up to.
Yeah.
And so that's when the pyromancer finally gets that crazy-ass door all the way open, and he's like, Tyrion, here you go. And so Tyrion's like walking in and looking, and of course we're seeing from the room to Tyrion, so we don't see what he's seeing. The pyromancer says, we've been working tirelessly day and night since Cersei commanded us to do so. And he says the count stands at 7,811, enough to burn Stannis' armies and fleets both. And Bronn, of course, now we turn around and see all these rows and rows and rows.
Yeah.
And Bronn goes, this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
And so Tyrion says, I agree. He says the contents of this room will lay King's Landing out. Like, it will burn it to the ground.
Sure enough.
And so then he says to the pyromancer, he says, you won't be making it for Cersei any longer. You're going to be making it for me. So then we cut to Dany. She's with the one handmaiden. They're watching the dragon. She's trying to teach him Dracarys to burn.
Her Harry Potter trick.
Yeah. And he finally gets a little flame out. And
what's the Harry Potter thing? The main spell when you're like gonna blast somebody, gat somebody with your wand.
Oh, like kill him or like
just like
Expelliarmus. Expelliarmus.
Maybe that's the one.
That's the like
I thought it was similar.
Like oh my god, it's like when you can disarm somebody.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was a similar sounding thing to what she was saying.
Oh, Dracarys.
I could see Harry Potter saying that and waving his shit at someone.
Yeah. Dracarys.
Yeah, for sure. It fits.
Yeah. It would be a cool fire spell.
Anywho.
Yeah.
So this dragon is burning a piece of meat.
Yeah. And so she says he'll be able to feed himself from now on. The one handmaiden like goes to feed him another piece, and she's like, let him rest. Quit playing with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other handmaiden, who's Dothrakian, she's the one that her brother, we're going to say brother, died.
Yeah.
She's clearly just sad and not very happy and doesn't quite like what's going on.
Well, she doesn't like that she's becoming more of a lady queen thing rather than this like savage queen.
Yeah, exactly. And the other handmaiden's like just
embracing it because she's hot and she's like, I fit in here. And
Yeah.
also these dragons are fun to play with.
Yeah, so the hot one is like, did you see the dress that Zara had made for you? And Dany's like, well, the last time I had a dress made for me, I was being sold to Khal Drogo.
Yeah.
And that's when the Dothrakian handmaidens, she says, may he ride forever and stuff.
Yeah, it's like
that.
yeah. Old news, bitch. Old news.
So, so then
it seems kind of insignificant when she says it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like she wants like the other people in the room to be like, oh yes,
but it's
you're
like,
right.
they're like, well, we're not mourning that anymore.
Yeah, onward and upward.
Yeah. So the other one keeps talking, the other handmaiden, she's just so excited. And so that's when Dany says, men like to talk about other men when they're happy. And then of course the other handmaiden kind of blushes because she knows she's been caught. And so she keeps talking about how Dany, if she was to if things were to work out, she could be a princess. And that's when the Dothraki handmaiden's like, she's not a princess, she's a Khaleesi.
She's not a prince. You can't sit with us.
When will we get married? Do we have to wait? Yeah, so that's when the Dothraki handmaiden's like, all right, let me dial it back a little bit. Sorry.
Yeah.
So she's like, you should wear it. You're their guest. It would be rude not to. And
you're not gonna get in trouble.
You're not gonna get in trouble. I'm hungry. So Dany, so we cut to her out in the gardens of Zohora's place, and there's a bunch of people there, and Dany's speaking to them, and she's kind of distracted because she can hear Jorah and two guys talking about this piece of gold thing
about stealing this big ass gold statue.
So she walks over and Jorah's like, oh, they're talking about stealing it, but they're like, oh, we can just pry out the jewels, and she's like, we can't steal it. And he's like, well, not right now.
Yeah,
when we
not
go to
now.
leave.
I mean, we're going to take it, but when we leave.
Yeah. And she says,
no, you can't.
You can't. She's
can't
like,
do
they
it at all.
saved us. We can't do it at all. And
It's like talking to a dog about shitting on the floor. It's like, yeah, but I gotta shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can't do it on the floor right there.
Yeah, exactly. So, the two Dothraki guys go to walk off. The one guy is handed a drink. He grabs the cup, pours out the drink, looks at the cup, and like just takes it
Yeah,
and
it's
walks
like,
away.
well, I'll just take this.
Just take this. So that's when Jorah and Dany are walking, and they're talking about the Dothraki, and she says, I heard that the only thing Dothraki can do is take things other people have made.
We just need to set up a new reward system for him. It's like, whoa, I like when I take things.
Yeah.
We'll be like, hey, chill. If you work for me, I'll give you things. Like,
Yeah.
Here, you get some food.
Yeah.
Here's a lady. She's nice.
She's cool.
Here's some grapes.
Hang out with her.
See,
Yeah.
things are all right.
Yeah. So we see the warlock of Karth come up. He welcomes Dany.
Who I hate. Hate his
Yeah.
face.
Oh yeah, he's
hate
the
his
worst.
stupid blue lips.
Yeah.
Ring
and,
pop sucking looking bitch.
And so he asks if she would like a demonstration. He holds out her hand, and it's a gem. And he's like, "Look closely." He says, "You look closely enough, you can see yourself in them." And so then he says, "Often more than once," and that's when a second
He
douchebag
pulls out the
shows
David
up.
Blaine shit.
Yeah. And so
Or the
then he
Chris
says,
Angel.
yeah, and he says, if you ever get tired of Zahora's presence and like company, we would love to host you in the house.
Yeah,
of the
because
Undying.
like, look how comfortable I'm making you feel now. Would you please come and stay in my house?
Of the Undying.
Sounds comforting, right?
Sounds like a place I want to go.
Sounds inviting.
Yeah. So that's when that dude walks off. And Zahora walks up and he apologizes for him. And he's like, I'm sorry. He's one of the 13. So I have to invite him because of customs and traditions. Those die hard in Karth.
Yeah.
And so he says they're weird and all they do is drink Shade of the Evening. And that turns their lips blue and their minds soft.
Yeah, for
And
shizzle.
so that's when... So Dany walks off with Zara, and that's when Jorah is. Oh, I forgot to look up her name. Of course. I mean, I guess we learn it later, but
I'm trying to remember the scene.
She's the masked.
The Street Fighter looking lady. It looks like Vega's like taking his girl out.
Yeah. I think Quoth is her name. Quoth of the Shadow.
That's her name?
Yes. She's a shadow binder. She's from
What
Asha.
What is that? Do you know what that is? Or should I look it up later?
No, I mean she's basically the same thing as like she's like Melisandre.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
She's
so she
from
just comes
Asha,
in,
where Melisandre's from.
Here's some vague weird information, or just here, let me just say something weird to you and then walk away, and I'll let that settle or simmer for a while.
Yeah. So she says you watch over her. She's talking to Jorah. And he goes, do I know you? And she says, no, but I know you. And she says, Jorah Mormont of Bear Island. And she says, I'm no one, but she's the mother of dragons. She needs protection now more than ever. And she says, she's like basically saying that those, everyone here will want to see the wonder. And once they find out what that is, then they'll seek lust.
Yeah.
And she says, dragons are fire made flesh and fire is power. And then she just leaves.
Power is power.
Yeah. So we cut to Brienne, her and Catelyn are talking. And so Brienne says, the shadow looked like Stannis. And
Also, I was going to ask
Yeah.
about the Stannis and that whole thing going down. Could any of that shit be going down if there weren't dragons back in the world?
Well,
Did they like awake the magic from coming up, or if there were no dragons and it was just like plain Jane times, and like could other magic be happening?
there's no clear yes or no to that.
Okay.
My thought is Melisandre has powers. I'm sure they have never been as powerful as they are now that dragons are in the world.
Power's back
Yeah.
in here. It's like when Santa's power is low in Elf, and everybody starts singing at the end.
Yeah.
So right now it's like everyone's singing.
Yeah, exactly. So we've talked about it before, how like Lord of the Rings is magic leaving.
That's kind of what I was referencing,
Yeah.
because I remember you told me that one time, and that kind of made me look at the story in a different way. It's like, it's real interesting that because you said, it's like, yeah, all the magic is leaving that realm, and it's funny because GOT, it's like,
It's coming in.
it's dead and it's coming back.
Yeah.
So it's super interesting.
Yeah, so it seems like...
And I'm wondering, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'm
fine.
wondering, it's kind of an egg or the chicken thing. It's like, did the dragons bring the magic back by coming back? Or
I think
is magic
heightened.
or is magic back in general and the dragons were hatched because of that?
My thought of that is that the magic and the spells and the options of all of this power have always been there, but it's been forgotten because no one believes it anymore.
Or is it kind of
because the dragons have been
so
gone
it's been-
for so long,
it's
so it's
been-
kind of dormant.
I was about to use that
So
word.
now you have people who have always believed it, and they've just like
But now they're
Melisandre.
like, yeah.
But like, remember,
they're hearing stories.
The first thing we see of her is her faking, like she's burning false prophets. But
Yeah,
it's
the
just
7.
like, but they're like, they're just statues
Yeah,
that
they're
they
just
had.
wooden statues.
They were in the sept that now she's burning. And so, and then they have this whole thing with the sword and stuff. It's her trying to push the thought of this magic being there when it's not actually there. So then when we see the comet, she's like, oh
shit.
things are starting to work. So then she's starting to believe in her powers.
That she's believing that she's doing it,
Yeah.
even though it's kind of just something in the air. Because I would assume the same thing. That's why I was wondering.
Good question.
Well, I guess the dragons hadn't hatched. We've had. There's definitely been magic back before the dragon. So I answered my own question there because
it's just
there's
dormant.
Well, magic brought White Walkers, whether they brought the magic back or magic brought them back.
And that's
They were on the move
before.
fucking fools up
before
before
the
the
dragons.
dragons hatch. So there's that.
So that's where the bigger question is when people really break down the series where they're like, well, we hate the White Walkers. And it's like, but
You
why
don't know-
are they coming?
Exactly. You don't really know what side they're on.
Exactly.
They're trying to kill all your favorite characters, but
That's
your favorite characters have only been around for 30, 40, 50 years. These things are a bagillion years old, and you have no idea what they might be overall trying to do something right.
Yeah.
Or not. They could
Or
all
not.
be dickheads.
Exactly. And that's where this series is so complex and so interesting because even at this stage with the knowledge we have and the amount of information we have and the stuff we can break down, it's still, there's still this question of, well, like you said, did the dragons bring the magic? Well, I think it's dormant and the dragons heightened it. And it's like, okay, but there was magic in the realm and there's dire wolves and we know
Exactly.
that there's all of these things that have been out there.
And
They've just been
Dementors.
hiding. Yeah, Dementors. So what brought them and what's the ultimate thing? So that's where it's all interesting to me.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's finish the story.
So back to where we are. So we see Brienne and Catelyn. They're talking about the shadow, the Dementor. Brienne says it looks like Stannis. Catelyn says it looked like a shadow in the shape of a man. And that Brienne was like in the shape of Stannis.
Yeah. You saw that shit.
Yeah. And so Catelyn changes the subject. She says, we should reach my son's camp tomorrow. She says that she's only staying long enough to tell Robb what she's seen, and then she's going home after that. She has Bran and Rickon she needs to see. And that's when Brienne steals Jon's line. And she goes, I never knew my mother.
I never knew my mother. I'm a bastard.
I'm a bastard. And Catelyn says that her own mother died in the birthing bed when she was young. And that's when Brienne says, well, yeah, birthing's a bloody business. And
birthing's a bitch.
yeah, and Catelyn says, well, what comes after that is actually harder. So Catelyn said, or Brienne says, once you're safely back, will you give me leave to go? I need to go and revenge Stannis. And, get revenge against Stannis, not revenge Stannis. Spanish. So Catelyn says, well, he has a great army around him, and I don't think you can get to him. And Brienne's like, I'm as good as any of them. I'll just cut right through him. It's not a problem. And so Catelyn, yeah, it's just not even a thing. Catelyn's like, well, Renly's death wasn't your fault. You served him bravely. And Brienne says, I only held him once, when he was dead, basically. And so Catelyn says, look, he's gone. You serve nothing and no one but by following him into the earth. Like, you need to be here. You need to kind of move on, get past it. And so Catelyn says Renly's enemies are Robb's enemies as well. You should just join our team.
Yeah.
Be with us. And that's when Catelyn's like, well, that's great, but I don't know your son. And I don't know if I can serve him yet, but I can serve you. And she's like, you have courage, not battle courage, but you have a woman's kind of courage. And she says, when the time comes, all I ask is that you don't hold me back. And if you promise you won't hold me back from Stannis, I'm yours. And so Catelyn says, when the time comes, I'm not going to hold you back. And so Brienne pulls out a sword. She swears it to Catelyn.
Catelyn's like, all right, cool. I'll make sure that I won't ask you to do any sussy shit.
Yeah. So she says, I won't ask you to do anything that will bring you dishonor. So they are tied up now.
Word.
So then we cut to Bran. He's holding court. Some guy's talking about how he's got thieves in his land. He
and
also
all the
has
while,
wolves.
his little brother
It's just cracking like nuts.
or something.
Nuts.
Being a little bitch.
Yeah, he's just being really loud and quite annoying.
Does this look like the place to be doing that?
Yeah, exactly. So he says that the wolves, there's more coming down every day. He says they come down in the night and they kill his sheep. He says, my sons are away fighting for your lord, so, or for, King Rob. So I
can't fend them off night and day.
Yeah. And he's like, I can't just keep doing this with no sleep. So Bran says, I can send you 2 orphan boys, to help as long as you can give them room and board. The guy's like, well, my wife always wanted more kids. Pulling a Kitty Foreman.
Yeah.
And so he's like, I appreciate it. Thank you. And so that's when Sir Roderick comes in. First, Bran yells at Rickon for being annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pipe down, bitch.
Yeah. And so then Bran's like, I want to go ride. Like, I need to leave.
We got to get out of here.
Got to go.
Got to go before it gets dark.
Yeah. And so that's when Roderick comes in and he says that Tommen Square is under siege. And they're like, how can the Lannisters be so far north? And he's like, well, it doesn't really matter because they're not going to hold us long.
Yeah, they could have just sent like a squad over there.
Yeah. So Roderick says that he needs to take 200 men, and Lewin's like, that's a lot of people, and he's like, not a big deal. Southerners won't last long.
That leaves us a little vulnerable.
Yeah, and they're not very far, so he's like, we need to go. And Bran's like, you need to go. They need to take care of this because
their people are away fighting, so we need to go fuck some shit up.
Yeah. So Asha and Bran are walking through the courtyard. And she's telling him to ask Maester Lewin his question. And he's like, I did. He said he never heard of the three-eyed raven. And so, or a three-eyed raven. And so Asha says, he's like, oh, well, I know you know what it means. Like, I know you know. And then he calls her a liar. And she's like, liar. And she's like, I'm not a liar.
Yeah, she's like,
that doesn't make me a liar.
Yeah.
And so he's like, well, give me an honest answer then. And she's like, you've been dreaming of it again. And he's like, yeah. And she's like, well, you told me you didn't dream. So now who's the liar?
Ooh.
Yeah. And so he obviously realizes that he's caught at that moment. And so then she says, what did you see in your dream? Something bad. And then she's like, tell me. And so he says, I dreamed that the sea came to Winterfell, waves crashed at the gates, and water flew over the walls. It flooded the castle, and drowned men were floating in the yard. Roderick was one of them. And she kind of abruptly cuts this off, and she's like, well, he's hundreds of miles away. And she's like, I know. Or Bran's like, I know, it was just a dream. And so then Asha just kind of grabs her stuff, tries to walk away before Bran could question her again. And he's like, about the three-eyed raven, what do they say about it north of the wall? And she's like, they say all kinds of crazy stuff. Yeah, they say all
kinds of crazy shit.
Yeah. So then we cut to north of the wall. That's when we see Halfhand and all the men looking at this mountain range. And he's like, do you see that? And everyone's like, no.
No.
And
Daniel didn't see it either.
No. And so Jon does, because he's got the eyes of a
wolf.
Or a wolf, yeah. So then he's like, it's a fire on the mountain. And Sam's like, well, I couldn't see that. And that's when Halfhand says, when they see them coming, the fire goes from being a bunch of men sitting around it to a signal. Yeah, and he says it's time for Mance Rayder to set up party. And that's when Mormont's like, well, how many wildlings have joined him? And he's like, all of them.
All of them?
Yeah. And he says they're ready to make their move. And they're like, well, where are they going? And he's like, somewhere safe, somewhere south.
someplace warm.
Aspen.
Talking about a little place called Aspen.
And so he's like, well, we can't march up there and we can't wait here. So pretty much, we only have a few options.
Scoot.
And
Scoot.
So Lord Commander's like, so you think we should fall back to the wall? And he's like, that's not what I said at all. And he's like, Mance was once one of us, and he's gonna now he's one of them, and he's gonna teach them.
He knows the tricks, bro.
Yeah, exactly. So he's like, look, what we need to do, we can't do with 400 men. We need to sneak in, kill Mance, and then everything's good.
Kill mans.
Kill mans.
Yo, that's your mans. Kill mans.
Grab your mans. So then John's like, Half Hands, like, he names 3 guys, and John's like, I'd like to join if possible. And Lord Commander's like, you've never been on you're a steward, you've never been on a range. And that's when John's like, well, but I fought and killed a white.
Yeah, a dead person.
Yeah, and he's like, so how many men can say that? And then that's when Commander's like, yeah, you were also beat by an old guy.
That was a cheap shot, though.
Pretty much. And that's when Half Hand's like, well, he's like, oh, Craster? And he's like, well, in the boy's defense, that guy's a tough old goat. And so that's when Sam pipes up and he's like, well, I can take on John's duties while he's gone. Of course. Yeah. And so that's when Lord Commander tries to be a dick one more time, because, of course, he's like trying to convince John not to go. But then he's like, I hope you make a better ranger than a steward.
Ooh. Yeah. Like what? What didn't he do well for you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
get your horn of ale.
Yeah. Again, I like the theory that Ned and not Jorah
had a deal
that they have that this was always the plan.
And he's
for
supposed
John.
to be like conditioning him to lead, and then
because
he's
that's
like, I want to go, and it's like, God damn it! All right, you can go.
Yeah,
please don't die, or this whole thing goes up.
Exactly. But I mean, I think at this point, with Ned being gone, he's kind of like, well, maybe it is better that if something's to happen to John, something happens without him ever knowing who he was.
And also, if he is special, maybe he'll go out there and just fuck shit up, get hard, get hard.
I think that's what happens.
We'll see what happens.
Right? Yeah,
we'll see what happens.
So, and that's when we cut back to Danny and Zahara are walking. And so he says, so tell me, how long has your manservant been in love with you? And she's like, he's not my manservant. He's my advisor. And he's not in love with me.
And
he's
also,
my
it's
friend.
like always with the guys asking this like roundabout question. I don't know, maybe the same amount of time that you've been in love with me, because every male that I come in contact is in love with me. People are always like, so, I noticed myself that person was in love with. Fucking everybody is.
Yeah.
What are you getting at?
Exactly. So, real quick, I meant to mention she is wearing the dress that he gave her.
Okay.
Yeah. Just mentioning that.
Looks good.
Yeah. And in the books, that dress is kind of a more like Lil' Kim thing, where like
sun's out, titties out.
She got one titty out.
Just one titty out.
Yeah, it's like that.
Does it have like a star on it?
No, it's boobie out. It's a sign of like wealth.
Are you fucking serious?
Yeah.
Oh, that's real convenient when they have hot ass guests.
Yeah, isn't
it?
Welcome,
please. Yeah, come stay at my place. Here, wear the this is the super guest dress.
Yeah.
With the one titty out.
So we can
Not my rules, by the way.
We just,
not my dress.
We just, we just how you
enforce
doing?
It. Yeah. How's your mama?
That's how we, say hi here.
All right, so
one
titty out.
One titty out. So obviously for the show, they were like, we can't just have Amelia Clark's titty out.
Can't just have like
every scene.
A bunch of old pregnant bitches up in here on the show. No, but yeah.
No. But it just so a little tidbit. So, when people are just like, Game of Thrones is just a way for nudity to be out there. They clearly are like, this just didn't need to happen.
Yeah.
Let's just change the dress.
It's way too, everybody's just going to be sitting there looking at the titty.
Exactly.
Like, there's one titty out and it's not a sex scene.
We won't get our...
Do you really want me to listen to the dialogue or look at the titty?
Exactly.
Good move, HBO.
Yeah, great move.
I would have been looking at the titty.
Yeah. Yep. You and...
the rest of the world. Alrighty.
Everybody does.
Everybody does.
So anyway, so she says that Jorah is her advisor and friend. And that's when Zora says, you can always tell what a man wants. And she's like, okay, well, what.
What a man.
So he asked her, he was like, what do you want? And she's like, I want to cross the narrow sea and take the Iron Throne. And he's like, so you want to conquer the 7 kingdoms for the Dothraki? Because you promised them that's your whole plan. And she's like, no. I want to do it because it's my birthright.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he says, I came from nothing, and I had to dance like a piece of cargo. And, I built everything I've got. And so she's like, well, you're a conqueror too, just a little less ambitious. And she's like, what do you want? Why did you bleed for me at the gates? Like, what's your
what's your angle, pal?
Yeah. So he says, I will show you. And that's when they go down to another crazy ass door.
Yeah.
And he's like hitting it. And he tells her that it's made of Valerian steel and that he's told people to come and try to break into it. No one can ever
Not even Danny's 11 to get into this fucking thing.
No, not at all. Unless they had the key around his neck.
Or the rebooted girls version. Maybe they could get in.
They could probably get in.
For sure.
Yeah.
It'll be, yeah.
They pick a lock with a hair, bobby pin and everything's good.
Adorable.
Yeah. So she's like, so what you're saying is that whatever I agree to, whatever's behind that vault, all of it could be mine? And he's like, no, half.
Yeah.
But
whoa.
Kind of chill,
Yeah,
chill.
Pump the brakes.
But half is enough for you to get everything you ever wanted.
She's like, so we get the door open, I get all the shit? I get all the shit?
That's it?
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so
you get all my shit.
Yeah, so she's like, so what do I need to do in return for half? And he's like, marry me. And she's like, well, that was romantic. And he was like, I married once for love, but the gods stole her from me. And so he says again, I came from nothing. My mother and father never owned a pair of shoes. Marry me and I'll give you everything.
I'll give you so many pairs of shoes.
Yeah, and he's like, I've more ambitious. I have more ambition than you thought. And she's just kind of looking at him, and he's like, look, the time's right. And then he drops the bomb on her. Robert Baratheon's dead.
Why was he trying to get people to break into his shit?
I think to
just to prove the point?
Make sure that it can't be done. Yeah,
to
prove the point. I'm sure that that's not something he actually did.
I think the key to it is the same necklace that Doctor Strange has.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that the same key?
It's probably just like they were like, this prop works, right?
Yeah,
Nobody will recognize it.
It seems to fit.
Yeah.
It's like a skeleton necklace.
Yeah, definitely. It's not a very good situation if a skeleton key can work.
Him and Doctor Strange can get in there.
Yeah, well.
That's it.
I mean,
take half his shit.
Yeah. And then he'll be like, Danny, you want this shit? Because I don't really need it. I'm Doctor Strange.
I don't need it. I got nice watches.
Yeah, I'm good.
And Raris and shit.
So Jorah says, she says that they're talking about how Robert's dead. And Jorah's like, well, you know, what you're doing. She's like, well, the plan is to marry the dude.
That's news to her.
Yeah.
That's like, that's old news to us, but she's just getting that. So she's kind of like, oh, shit.
Yeah. And so she's saying, so she's repeating back to Jorah what Zahara just said to her. And so she's like saying, like, I need to marry him.
Being
this is the way
completely
to do it.
Convinced by him, too. She's just like, boom, we got to do this, and we got to get the ships, and
exactly.
I got to do this.
Being a naive
And he's
person.
like, whoa.
Pump.
Chill.
Yeah. So he's like, look, you can't win with an army that's paid for. And he's like, to win Westeros, you need support. And she's like, look, the time to strike is now. Robert's dead. And he's like, rich men do not become rich giving more than they get. Like, this guy wants something from you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he
wants to be king, and he wants those bonds.
Yeah. And so he says, you know, I think we need to figure out a different plan. So she's like, well, what do you think we should do? And he's like, I think we should move carefully. We want to make sure that we're not going too, crazy here.
And also,
so he says the hard way and the right way are two different things sometimes.
Yeah, you don't want to be hugely in debt to this guy.
Yeah. And so that's when Danny's like, don't speak to me like a child.
It's like, well, you are a child.
Like a tiny, tiny bit. This guy has been through battles.
Yeah, I've only been on this earth 4 times as long as you have.
Yeah.
No big deal.
And so then she asks Jorah what he wants. And she's like, what do you want? Tell me. And he says, to see you sit the Iron Throne, you have a good claim, a title, a birthright, but something more. You also have a gentle heart. You'll be respected and feared, but you'll rule with good intentions.
Yeah, you're a sweetie.
Yeah, and so he says, sometimes when I look at you, I don't believe you're real. And that makes her very uncomfortable.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, so then she says, so what do you think, what would you have me do? And he says, make your own way, find your own ship. You only need one. you need allies in Westeros. And so she says, well, how do you get this ship? And he's like, I'll find you one. A good ship with a good captain. And she says, I'll look forward to meeting him. Obviously, I need to go with Jorah.
Yeah.
So then we cut to Gendry. He's making a sword with his shirt off. And Arya is like...
She's like,
stealing looks.
Am I growing up?
Yeah.
Something's happening.
She's definitely leering at him as much as she can.
Hello.
Hello. Well, hello.
Right on.
So she tells him he should stand side face, and he's like, "What's that?"
Sideways.
Yeah. And so he asks why, and she says smaller target. And so he's like, I mean, I'm just practicing. Like, I'm just, Like, and so she says, well, if you're practicing for a fight, you should practice right.
Yeah.
And that's when the tickler just dies.
Yeah, just poof.
Yeah.
You just hear a bot, or you just hear a scream.
Yeah. And so, of course, they all run over. We see the tickler's dead. And it pans up, and we see Jaqen just up there.
Well, he has had his head turned 180 degrees around and then tossed.
Yeah, and he's staring up.
Yeah. And
at
Jaqen's just sitting there eating an apple like, oh, would you look at that?
Yeah, so he makes eye connection with Arya and then touches his eye. One. And
there's one.
That's the end of the Eop.
Not bad.
Yeesh.
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 Well.
Yeah, good episode.
Good episode for sure.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can do another one tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't see why not. So
I'm getting antsy.
Antsy in the pensy.
Because the end of this season's really good.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely really good. And we're getting into so much meat, like you're saying, like trying to figure out like all of these little things and why this is happening.
Yeah, we had a couple good little rants in that one.
Yeah.
All GOT related, so okay, I think.
I agree. I don't think we have to stick to the episode just because we're on it.
No,
it's all Game of Thrones related.
Yeah, you right.
I'm not talking about what I do for work, so I think it's okay.
Okay.
So as always, Throne Thugs Podcast at on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to email us, it's thronethugs@gmail.com.
Yup. Not com. Yeah. Don't try to go to com.
No.
And listen to our other podcast, Murd Up.
Yep.
Murder stories, true crime. Same format kind of here. She's talking to me, talking some shit.
I do all this research. It's a little better than this because sometimes I forget. I'm like, I can't remember what happened with that guy, but my vague memory says this.
Well, that's why I'm here. I feel like the two, you typing during the episode and then me trying to pay attention.
Yeah.
I feel like we throw a decent little show together.
Hopefully.
We have people returning.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for listening and whatnot, and for, I assume, sharing, because sometimes we've caught fire in some little places.
Yeah,
so.
and I think it'll get more and more as the weeks come because we're closing in.
Yeah. Also, if you have artwork, Game of Thrones related artwork that you would like to send, we've been just sharing people we find on like Reddit or Instagram or stuff, just because there's so many cool artists out there that are doing depictions.
Pretty much just getting hyped for this last season.
Yeah.
I mean, this shit is about to end. So yeah, we're just hyped. We're trying to put content out there and just get everybody else hyped because we're all in this together.
Yeah. So if you have something and want to send it to us, please do, and we'll share it.
Or if you want to chit chat, or if you hear that we said something like a theory on here and you're like, oh, I don't think that at all.
Yeah.
Well, fucking hit us with it. Because I would love to hear
debates.
Like, and like some people thinking in different directions. That's very interesting.
Yeah, I'm totally. I love talking theory, and I love talking theory that
rock appreciation and theory.
Yeah, and I really like talking about stuff that maybe I haven't really thought of. There was one I saw on Reddit the other day, and I was like, I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Because I got obsessed and spent most of my time just reading.
Yeah, and I mean, you're gonna have your ways of thinking, and then you're gonna have friends to bounce ideas off of and think of their ways of thinking, and then you'll complete strangers. So that's why the show's fun.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
All right.
Well, thanks for listening, and we will see you guys at the next one.
Yeah. Bye.
Peace out.